Evening, Jade. Hello, Benbot. I've just been out playing a five-a-side, so now back with a cup of tea and a bit more modelling. Do I do any work off live? Yes, I do. I've done a bit this evening before I went out to football. I've put some of the shrubs in the background. Hey Steve, I'm working on the paving for the brewery bit now, yes. Evening, Beverly. So yeah, I did this as well. I started describing all the crazy paving for this area now. Evening, Andy. You can just hopefully see if I bring it into screen. It's quite pale. And this one, because it's a dark brick, it's coming. The grouting's coming out quite well. But I want to make sure. Well, I want the grouting to pale it all off anyway, so I'm not scraping as deep on this. I just want it to tint as well. My hands are covered in grout again. Thank you, Natasha. I just need to paint off these bridges better tonight, but give you the overall look. I've added some trees to the background, and I realised it wasn't just bare vegetation. There's a lot of trees in the back, so I think that lifts it. These at the back here, I've snipped off the branches off a much bigger tree. So, fallen lady's moved. Yes, she's now unconscious on the pavement on the way up the hill. Yeah, we won tonight. Just sorry, somebody asked a question back there and I missed it. What's the least favourite job to do when modelling? I don't know really. I like all aspects of it. I suppose it's the bits before I come to actually making it look half decent, just the sort of the general putting the thing together aspect. Yeah, I can't remember. I thought I said I was going. Maybe the connection lost or something, I don't know. I'm sure I signed off and said good night. Can't remember. Good evening, Andrew. Yeah, that's the crazy paving for the brewery area, almost done. Hello, Shah. I'm very well, thank you. A little bit sore. My son managed to kick the ball right in my face tonight. I thought I'd lost a contact lens, but it's still there, but I just couldn't see for a while. That's the top edge done. Evening, Dave. Just sent email. All right. I'll look forward to reading that in a little while then. Thanks, Robbie. The greenery, I think, is helping to pull it all together now. Let me I'm just going to paint this. This is the side walling. Yeah, apologies if I seem to leave abruptly. I had a nice hot bath calling. Do you know what? I don't think he has. I keep sending update pictures on Twitter, but he hasn't read any of them for about 5 days now. So I do know his Twitter presence is rather sporadic, but I haven't had a comment back yet. He's going to be inundated with messages on Twitter by the time he switches back on again. Oops. I don't need to paint that, I've just realised, because that's butted up against the wall. I hope he hasn't done a runner as well. I can't remember if he's paid 50% or 25%. It's modelshop.co.uk, so they're called 4D models, but the web address is modelshop.co.uk. Sometimes I can't find the off button, so it looks like I've yeah. Sometimes I can't find the off button in time. Move Daisy out of the scene, put the drunken lady in. So what I want to do tonight is do some more work on the roof. No, she can't. Oops. Don't know if you noticed, but I've added a telegraph pole there, and then there's another one in the corner there. The lady's now investigating the beer garden. So a couple of jobs tonight to do. One of them is to repaint these bridges, even though I've stuck them in place. I've realised that I painted them the wrong colour. It was always a base colour, but I realised the uprights were black, so we'll add some of that. Yes, you can, but I am going to redo that because I know I've given you a method for it, but I'm not entirely happy with it. So I'm going to do something else with it. I've also got quite a bit of debris in, but I'm going to make it look better. I think I'm going to come back to the stream once all the scenery is done, and that way I'm not going to make a mess of it again. When I say make a mess, I've got scenery and debris in. Yeah, no, whoops. I don't use resin for the stream now. It's rather expensive, and it's a little bit beyond my budget for this model, but I'm going to use a different method. I used watered down silicone for that one, but it hasn't worked quite as well as I wanted it to. It was a clear silicone and alcohol mix, like Jade said, but it looks okay. I just don't think it's good. Oh, that sounds nice, Kaz. Yes, it's very, very good for the old mental health. Oops. I'm going to paint those, like you say, I'm going to paint those black. You might not be able to see that now. Just a minute, I just need to go and do something. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment. Back in. Come on. Sorry about that. I'm back now. Anybody's still there? Yes. Dog's a nutter. That noise you heard was him breaking out of the conservatory. I just left him shut in while I went to go and do something. He doesn't like being left. So he rags and rags and rags at the door handle until he can let himself out, and then comes and follows. Evening, Ryan. You've made the shed. How was it then? Kind of wish I hadn't glued this on now before I've painted it. I thought I'd be just giving it a bit of a wash with different colours to stain the wood, but I realised that the uprights should have been black. I did it for kids. I have done a thatch roof effect as a video on my bio page. No, there isn't. There's a photograph on my website. I made it before I started going on TikTok. Now, I'm sure it's all fine. It wasn't so long ago that he was chasing me to find out whether I'd be starting it or not. I don't think there's any problem with the model. He's probably just very busy. I'll have to turn the whole thing around to get to the other side. I'll just paint these from a distance. I've drawn up the bridge that goes over the stream at the far end as well, but I haven't managed to make that yet. That might be tomorrow. this is the most scenery I've ever put into a model. No, I haven't watched it, no. No, I can't remember that who you were talking about. Sorry. Hi, Mike. I don't know if you're talking to me or Jade there. Well, I've got to remember to put the paving slabs just on the other side of this bridge on as well. It's it's a model diorama, but it's made for a client who's commissioned me to make a model of the inn he owns, which is the building there. So that's the Dipton Mill Inn, and I'm just putting the whole base, putting it on a local base. Local, does that make sense? I'm just setting the scene rather than it being a model of the house. Pub. It's I think in fact I think I've got the whole of the last series on the Sky Planner. I just never got round to watching it. Thank you. Can't pronounce your name, but thank you. So the base layer I put on was far too orangey brown. It's more of a pale wood. So I'll just rectify that. This little top coat. What do I think of the 14th Doctor? Who's the 14th now? Is that Jodie? Can't remember. Or is Jodie 13? I didn't really want Peter Capaldi to stop being the Doctor. But they've all got to move on and regenerate. No, David not 13th, is he? Oh, do you mean? Might be a spoiler there. Yeah, I'll be sad to leave this and go on to the next. I almost feel like you're not going to be as interested with the next one. It's not quite the same sort of level of diorama building. I don't know what the eventual plan is going to be, because it won't be mine when I've finished. I'll be sending it on to the client. I'm hoping they're going to display it on something substantial. Oops, I'm going to have to touch that up. It's not easy. Like I say, I was a bit eager to get it in place last night. And what I should have done is painted the whole thing first and then stuck it in place. Painting and decorating. It's not. I haven't done any home DIY for a while. Everything's kind of neglected while I do this next project. I'm not sure. I've got about 3 started at the moment, so I need to decide which of them I'm going to carry on with and go. But they're all the 3 that I've got on the go. There's 2 stone houses and 1 brick. Obviously my favourite stone, so I might continue with the stone house. I've got quite a way on with it anyway. Just needs some new scribing work doing to it. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, it's around about 70 hours at the moment. The next one's going to, the base area I think is going to be no bigger than A3. Possibly just a little over A4. Were any of you watching when I finished off the semi-detached house? That's a sort of an example of the more modest size building that I do. I need to leave that to wait to dry now, but yeah, put several houses in a pub. I'll just spin that round a bit. Those bridges look a little bit better now. Beetlejuice, yes. I need to put a little hidden graveyard for him to hide in. And what I'm going to do next is work on this. Oops. Do you know what? I can actually glue that down now. Oh, I've painted it. Probably glue it down in place. I might just leave it for a small period of time. Right, I've got the roof to finish off on this. I've given it another wash, but I'm going to give it a dry brush now of a grey colour. I did get my pizza, yes, I had a nice meat feast. Very enjoyable. I was looking forward to that. Push that a little bit further out of the way. So I'm just going to dry brush over this now with a medium grey. It's just going to pick off the tiles a bit better. Yes, I think I've gone, well, I've still got bits to do, but I think I've gone sort of above and beyond what was originally briefed in the job. But my aim with this is to make it look as realistic and accurate as I can, so I keep adding little details. There's a little lamp to make for the corner yet. I've got an idea how I'm going to make that now. I've been thinking about that for a while. But no, sometimes you can't. You've just got to decide to stop. There's lots of little details to put onto this brew house building yet. There's wiring and little gutters, things to add. to be economic, this paint. I don't want to flood it. I want to leave behind the essence of the tiles. Hello, Thomas. Oops. I'll have to rectify that later. My brush went a little bit astray. Trying to work out why it's not sitting flat. This is almost like a whole separate project all on its own. Yeah, well, I don't know. I reckon about 10 more hours maybe. Definitely going to be finished this week. It's a good job there isn't anything more to the property. I've pretty much got the entire grounds of the property on. Thank you. Yeah, I've got pretty much the entire sort of floor plan, if you want to call it, area plan. Most of the time, if I'm making a garden or a base, I'll just sort of crop into it, because otherwise the house is it ends up looking lost. Yeah, I'm aiming to finish this week. That's the aim, the deadline I've set myself. So after I've got this brew house in, it's just going back round and adding a couple of little details here and there, I think. As you can see, I wasn't quite happy with the embankment, but now I've put the trees in, I think that looks a lot better. Likewise, in the back corner there's the beginnings of some wire trees that I've put in. Again, they're cut off a half-made tree that I had lying around. I've realised I'm never going to do anything with them. They're originally made just to experiment with making trees, so I'll give them a coat of paint, and then I'll give those bare branches a coat of paint, and then add some foliage. This last year went quite quick. Yeah, I think it really did. I can't believe we're into halfway through January already as well. I think the final working time on this is going to be nearly a month. So I've probably halved my expected time. Thank you, Gabriel. Yes, it's I've tried my best to match the existing style and level of weathering. Somebody commented back there that they hate doing roofs. You need to get the roof right, or at least looking good, on a model, because when you look down at it, that's kind of the first thing you see. So you can't really compromise on a roof. I haven't made a farm yet, but I could if I was asked to. This is the first pub I've made. If it's architectural, I can make it. Dry brushing on just gives it a bit of a patchy look as well, which is, I think it's a matter of practice. but in a way I've cheated with this because I've cut all the tiles using my Cricut so they're all uniform. But in the past I've overlaid strips of self-adhesive tiles down, and try as you might, it's quite difficult to lay them accurately horizontal and equally spaced. You've really got to concentrate when you're putting them down. And I know while the overall look of the model's been pretty good, I've been a little bit disappointed that I've not got the roof quite straight, so I think using this method is quite effective. Because these are really thin slate tiles, there's hardly any relief in when you scale it right down, so you can get away with cutting them flat. On the roof of the main house over there, I've added a few broken ones, but this has been completely re-roofed recently, so it's hello Grace, I'll probably be on till around about midnight. Yes, hand delivered. Victoria clay tiles, yes, there are some really horrendous looking, well that's not horrendous, but some nice looking tiles that are difficult to model. Like the one that I've just completed that's on a shelf somewhere had some of those horrible sort of ridged tiles. So the painting's not the problem, it's matching the shape really. But right, I'm going to leave that to dry instead of speeding it up because I can work on something else. What I'm going to do now is, although the stonework looks pretty good, I want to engrave into it again to give it a deeper look, because on the real thing it's quite pronounced. So I'm just going to use my engraving tool, and because it's been grouted, I'm basically just scratching some of the grout out, and it's leaving behind a layer as well. So don't know if you can see that. Can you see that? Yeah, it's just looking a bit more in relief. Yes, thank you very much for the gift. I didn't notice, but thank you. So I'm almost, well, I am kind of doing the stone again. I'm just going back over it. To me, it just looked a little bit too flat. And that way I can also maybe go over a few of the stones and recolour them. I'm just going to switch to this slightly blunter tool. See if that's any good. Trouble with it being blunt, don't know if you can see there. Will it focus? No. Trouble with it being blunt is it just tends to slip over the surface as opposed to going in where I want it to. It just has a nicer round edge. Can't focus. Come on, focus. There we go. I think it's just going to make it, because everything's kind of flat, I think it's just going to make it stand out. Thank you, Mikes. I don't know if that's a typo or what, but I'll take it. I can't even, do I put my name on a plaque on the finished model? No, I don't usually, but it's a good idea, that. Should put a little sign up somewhere that says something like "No trespassing by order of L&R Models." Yes, I do. That's a good idea as well. Can you see you made a typo there and I hadn't even noticed until you corrected yourself? This is going to take some time, but I think it's worth doing. Quarter scale hay bales, I've no idea. I'd try making your own, really. Unless you need to just make a lot. It's not something I've come across, that hay bales. It's not, especially not in quarter size. They usually and Jade just answered for me. Usually between 50 and 100 hours. I did estimate this was going to take me a lot longer. You need a lot. I tried making some out of, just making rectangles out of Foamex. Because I needed some 1/76 scale ones to go in a stables that I was making. And then covering them with straw static grass, but it didn't quite work. Can't remember what I did in the end, or did I just give up? I think I just made a pile of straw instead. It is a long time, yes. Hey Rachel. The reason why it takes a long time is because I do stuff like this. I spend quite a lot of time going back over and over the stonework until I get it just as I want it. I didn't rescribe the main pub wall because it's slightly different. Oh, thank you. I kind of have. I did a little diorama model of the old Granada cinema at Mansfield that no longer exists. There's one of the DJs on Mansfield FM has got a passion for I can't remember the right word. The nostalgia of the Mansfield cinema. So he runs a website that covers all the history of it, and he asked me if I could possibly make a model of it based on the photographs that he'd got. So I did. I went ahead and made the model, and then he kind of expanded the scope of it and asked me if I could set it in a scene which included the shops that were next to it. So it turned into a massive research project, but that was one where we had to call it a day in terms of where we stopped, because we could have carried on going down the street. But yeah, there was a few shops in that one. These are all client commissions, so they're made to order. But if you were to order a specific building from me, I could make it, although there's a large waiting list at the moment. No, there was nearly 200 when I first came on, but this is a nice number. I'm not. There seems to be different times, peak times when people are around. Last night was quite. Good evening, Jamie. Last night was quite busy. I think there was more interest going on in the picture. I started off by 2 years-ish. I'm hoping to bring that down. I'm usually basing off. I've got about 12, 13 jobs on the waiting list at the moment, and I'm kind of basing it on taking around 2 months to complete a model at the moment. That's because I work full-time as well. This is a second income job. But I'm on target at the moment for 1 a month, so I may drastically bring that waiting list time down. Especially since I've got the next 3 projects already half started, so I've got a bit of a kickstart on it. I have made a lighthouse, yes. There is a little video on my bio page. I don't think it made it to the website, but yes, I've made one of Smeaton's Tower in Plymouth. That was after I made a model for the client of their house. They loved it so much they wanted something else making. Oh, very good, Joey. Is it going well? Oops. Which has taken the longest? It's a toss-up between the 1/12 scale house, doll's house scale house that I made, and the mill. Because that was a big building, I think. Yeah, the mansion was about 150, but I think the mill was nearly 200. There was an awful lot of stone to be scribed for that, and an awful lot of windows. I did subcontract the windows, had them etched, but I drew them up first. You see the progress I'm making on the stone there? Tile with the lighthouse, probably about 30 centimetres, so it's only about this big. The base was lit, but the lamp wasn't. It really is difficult to stick this in focus because this model's huge now. I've actually got a corner of one of the next buildings that I'm making. I've already scribed quite a lot of the stone into it. This one's got a rendered end, the brick chimney, but I've only made an L shape. That's a little bit of the backing paper that I haven't pulled off yet. Yes, I will. An L&R beer. Yes, it's little things like this. I mean, if it was, I don't know, it's kind of okay as it stands. See, that gable end needs a lot of work. But I think because this is quite a nice little building as well. As you can see, I've got a little bit of paint splatter on the side, which I'll have to work out as well. But I think because it's a nice little building, a nice little stone building, it's worth just paying that extra attention to get it to look spot on. I'm not saying the stones are 100% representation, but they're very close. I missed the comment about scaling, but scaling is quite easy once you get your head around it. You just have to know what the original item is that you're modelling, and divide it by your scaling factor. So, for example, if you've got an 800 wide door and you're working in 1 to 100, it's an 8mm wide door. Or if it's 176, you divide it by 76, which I can't do the maths for that just off the top of my head. If you switch between scales, it can get a bit confusing. Hello, Gibbo. How are you doing this evening? We all had a nice Monday. Oh. I made a cup of tea and I've completely forgotten about it again. Excuse me. Yeah, I'm not so bad. Had a bit of a cough earlier. I couldn't shake it, but it's gone now, so it means I can talk. Good evening, Mr. Sinatra. I'm well, how are you? It's a mix. It depends. With being in a graphic design background, I work in millimetres. That's my sort of measurement. So if I'm doing anything, it's all in millimetres. But if a client gives me a load of measurements in imperial, I then have to scale it, convert it into metric before I carry on. I was brought up on the metric system, so even though I know what sort of 12 inches, when someone says it's like 32 inches, it's quite hard for me to get my head around that unless I convert it. But Google's your best friend when it comes to doing that, because you just run into a converter. Oh, they're all models for adults. I think if I was making a kid's model, it'd be a little bit more simple, unless they were a collector. I think they're a little bit too delicate and expensive for kids to play with, really. If that doesn't sound too sort of condescending. Hello, Mrs. Purple Fruits. It's a dream. Why is it a dream? Yes, I'd love to have a go at a bit of D&D modelling. Watching somebody on YouTube today at lunchtime who's made a Necromunda, or he does Necromunda kill team kind of dioramas. He'd made this massive hive city thing out of lots and lots of bits of foam. It was really cool. It'd be nice to sort of switch genres, as it were, and work on something more fantasy related. No, I use this material called Foamex. That's what it looks like on the inside. It's a PVC. It's a durable PVC foam. It's really, as you can hear, it's really quite tough. You know a few D&D builders, do you? Yeah, there are a lot of wargame builders out there, aren't there? I think I'm fairly niche in doing people's houses. I know there's one other guy, at least one other guy that does what I do, but he's not on TikTok, as far as I know. So I'm quite safe over here until he finds out. but he's a lot more expensive than I am too. Oh, thank you. I'm trying to stay in focus. I can't help it if I'm not. Or should I say, I'm not doing it on purpose. I just keep pulling it more towards me. And I realise that you can't see what I'm doing. Good evening, Mr. Henderson. Yes, I'm well. How are you? I'm well now. I'm in my happy place and scribing stone. I had to resurrect a website at work today, but once I'd managed to do that, it was a bit quiet. Gosh, it's going to take a while to do this. Don't rush it though, is my tip. Even though you feel very tempted to do so. You see the difference between the side that I have scribed or rescribed and the bit that I've not quite done yet. Yes, it's all Foamex, so if you look underneath, that's 1mm, but that's only because I wanted the reveal to be shallower. You see the door inset's a lot closer than it is on the stone inset. But yes, they're all pieces of Foamex, so you can create all kinds of effects with it. And the key is sanding it down first to get the texture onto it and to enable you to paint it. If you've got a nice sanded surface, you can easily tint it without flooding it with paint. I work in marketing for a manufacturer, so they make toilet cubicle panels. So it's nothing overly exciting, but I handle the website or basically any kind of digital marketing that needs to be done. Websites, email campaigns, bit of literature design, case studies, all sorts of things like that. But there are some days when there's not an awful lot to do. It's a very self-motivating job, so I've got to give myself tasks to do. It does mean that sometimes I can switch over and do a bit of modelling at lunchtime. It's the dream. It is the dream, but I'd need to be able to pay myself a better wage than what I'm currently managing to sort of pull in from it. I do have a large waiting list at the moment, but I managed to underprice myself drastically, and until I've got through all those commitments, I'm not making an awful lot. Although it does sound like a lot of money if someone was to ask how much it was. It's not replicating the kind of wage that I need. If I was able to work quicker as well, that'd be another thing, because then I could start, you know, pushing myself for opening commissions. So at the moment it's going to continue to be a side hustle until I can start making some real money out of it. But yeah, it'd be an absolute dream if all I did every day was get up, make a cup of coffee, and then go to the studio and start building things. It's like that, I don't know if you're on Instagram, have you seen this? Is like that, hey, it's Laura Jane. She did that song about it costs that much because it takes me effing hours. And that's so true of any kind of arts and crafts. But then you get people, you know, they might have spent about 20 hours or so making a crochet cardigan, for example. And can you really get away with charging 200 quid or something for a cardigan if you wanted to try and make yourself £10 an hour? It's a tricky one. But kind of, I'm a little bit different because I'm commissioned to make them, so it's not like I'm making something and then hoping I'm going to sell it. Let's just say, Gibbo, that if I was quoting for it now, it would be, but it wasn't. But at the time, I thought I was quoting it sensibly. So it's nice that some people do actually appreciate what something's worth. At the end of the day, it's like with everything else, it's what people are willing to pay, and some people are willing to pay. Plus materials, yes. There's definitely hundreds of pounds worth of materials gone into this as well. Or should I say at least £100 worth of materials. I know the Foamex itself is quite cheap when you think about the paint and the scenic materials. That's why I try and make try and do as much as I can handmade. Yeah, maybe. That's an idea. One weak part of my my work is that I don't photograph things very well. I tend to snap them on the phone camera and then send them off instead of taking some more arty shots. Can we see that now? Now we've got some nicer relief on the stone. I was thinking I was going to have to touch it up, but I think adding the relief has just brought that to life. When you look at the when you look at the gable end there, how different it looks. See, it's kind of a different thing. I don't know what kind of work you do with cars, but you're wanting to try and be affordable so more people use you in that kind of respect. But then undervaluing what you're doing, it's a difficult area, isn't it? Thank you, Vicky. Yeah, so this is kind of a side that's not going to be as visible, but it still needs the the attention paid to it. Yeah, maybe. Over on Twitter, I tried to. I used to run giveaways when I reached sort of follower milestones. So when I reached initially, because it was quite kind of slow going, I'd do a giveaway when I reached like a couple of hundred, and then it started jumping up in thousands. But I thought, what could I make that's small and quite easy to make that I wouldn't mind giving away? So that's when I came up with the idea of making sheds. But out of that idea of making little giveaway sheds, something somebody could have of mine as a sort of a prize draw thing, I actually got a few commissions to make sheds for people. Sheds and workshops and summer houses and things like that. So that's why I've got a few of those kind of things going on. Yes, 80s roots curl. I use a cricket. That's what I use for marking off the main parts. You see, trucks are a bit more of a specialist thing. They're harder to work on, aren't they? My father-in-law's a HGV mechanic. But he's also got that sort of vibration knuckle thing that mechanics get. Yes, it's an engineer's scribe. I got this from Amazon. So if you just look for scribe, I think what it's actually intended for is marking metal sheet before cutting it. You know, you just drag this along the edge of a set square, etc. But yeah, you can also. This is another scribe that I got from a model shop. It's got quite blunt over the years because I've used it to scribe stone quite a lot. These are made from a material called Foamex, Sean. So it's a lightweight PVC foam. It's quite sturdy, as you can see. It's also very strong, but you can carve straight into it with a little bit of careful painting as well. Make a nice stone effect. So I've already painted and filled this, having carved it once, but I'm just going to go back over it again now to make the stone relief stand off a bit more. This is a new build, but it's been built out of like a rubble ashlar stone, and it's also been made with quite prominent pointing. It's quite a cute little stone building, so I think adding the extra detail just I forgot what I was saying. Completely forgot what I was saying. Mid-sentence, it's gone. Excuse me, sorry. Thank you, gaming guy. Yeah, definitely. I saw some wargaming pieces the other day that somebody had made for sort of, general sale. They're not bespoke pieces, but they were 3D printed little houses, a lot smaller than this. But you could see all the print marks on it, and I suppose for wargaming, where you're just wanting to sort of get some quick buildings made up and placed on the scene, it's not so bad, but it's definitely not my thing. You know, one of my mates that I play football with is a commercial electrician. So he does all the contracts for, you know, firms like Nestle and things like that. I think he prefers that much more than domestic rewiring and things. So I mentioned before about cutting mitres, and that way you get the nice little, you can carry the stones around. You work on the railway, oh, what a cool job. I hope you can all hear this nice little scratching noise that I'm making. It's very satisfying. Yes, it's bad enough running my cricket. I use the cricket to cut the roof tiles. And I am really conscious of the electricity it's using, but yeah, some people have multiple machines for printing off stuff, especially if it's a business. But I have seen people with multiple cricket machines. It's going to hit those people hard. I suppose overheads will increase, which means pricing has to increase. No, I suppose not. Yes, the water. Did I answer your YouTube comment? Yeah, I think I said I was going to do that tonight, didn't I? No, I'm not going to, but I am going to change the way I've made the stream. I'm not 100% happy with it. I think it's a decent enough method, but considering the sort of quality and work I've put into the rest of the scene, I have a feeling I feel the stream is letting me down a little bit at the moment. So I'm going to use another technique involving, strangely enough, tissue paper and varnish. Hopefully I'll be able to show you that. But again, it's not using... You can get specialist water effect mediums. They're about £20 to £30 for the kit. But I suppose if I was doing it for myself, to flick at the stream, yeah, it looks okay. Just give you a quick look. But it's not quite as good as I'd hoped it was going to be honest. It's also got quite a little bit of scenery that's fallen in it at the moment. I don't know if I can hold my camera in that angle. Just goes around the corner like that. But I'm going to redo it so it just looks a little bit better. What's going to change with the stream? I'm just going to do it so it looks a little bit more realistic. Like I say, I think it's okay, but okay is not really good enough for this diorama, seeing as the amount of work I've put into the rest of the model. I think I need to do the stream again. Like I said, the technique that I'm going to use is nice and simple, and also quite cheap to produce, but it should produce a nicer effect. I think for the method I've done, if I was making a pond or something like that, that would be fine. But for a running water stream, it's not quite. It's just not quite gone to plan. Like I said, it's okay. It's just not. It's not completely right. more watery, more reflective, exactly, and a lot more of an indication of running water. It's a bit too sort of static looking for me. Yes, I'm Lee. Pleased to meet you all. I used to have, or I had got my name pinned on the intro chat, but I think I've lost it. I could, but just imagine that. It's like a whole set of lighting and a real running water stream. The trouble with real running water, it's like if you look at a lot of the old films that were, like if you look at some of the old war films or the original Titanic film, A Night to Remember, you can tell they were filmed with like models in real water, because water doesn't scale. It looks wrong. So if you had real running raw water in a model, you could tell it was not the right size. Are you any good at model railway wiring? Although Jamie's going to come and help me with that at some point. Wiring is definitely not my strong point. When I first started doing these lives, there were about 4 or 5 regulars. There seems to be a lot more now. I just hope you're all going to keep invested for the next one. That's not going to be quite as scenic as this one. Yes, at some point Jamie's going to come up and help me with the wiring for my model commission. I think I'm going to have to end up making a model for him in return. Only a small one though. Oh, cheers, William. Thank you for joining me for so long. Enjoy the rest of your, if you're going to bed, sweet dreams, etc. If not, enjoy the rest of your evening. Good evening, Peter. Yes, this is what kind of hopefully makes the work jump out a little bit more, and probably gives you an idea of the amount of hours that I spend it. A lot of you have been watching this from the very beginning, so you kind of know when I say I put so many hours into the job, just what it entails. Sometimes elements come on really quickly, like the scenic work that I've just been doing, when you can make an embankment or a lawn really quickly, but then other times work like this really slows things down. Yeah, it's an engineer's scribe. It's a little handy thing. I don't really know why it has the pocket clip, because you're never really going to stick it on a pocket, but because of the sharp pointy thing. But yeah, I got this from Amazon. I just searched for scribe. It's almost like the tip of a dart. In fact, I started using a tip of a dart for scribing stone, but you really have to file it down because it's too rounded, too thick, but it's quite comfortable to hold. This one is really comfortable to hold. This is the first scribe that I got, but I've carved the point away, but it's just really not comfortable. I got this from a model shop. It's got another end on it, but that's really useless because you can't get some direct control on it. But that's what the other end used to look like. That was pointed, and now I've just used it too many times on carving plaster and things. It's gone rounded. But I can use it for embellishing a more rounded edge. That first one's nice and pointed, so it gets the depth. And then if I use this one, see, this is just me going back over and over things again. If I use this more blunt end, I can kind of get a deeper, more rounded effect into the stonework. I have done once or twice some of my earlier railway models. When I had a bit more time, I did go to town and add interiors. In fact, there's a good shed I actually made for myself, where I modelled the entire interior so the inside of the goods shed with all the cranes and the planking, and then the little office block that you couldn't actually see at all once you'd put the roof on, but I modelled the entire office with filing cabinets and a potted plant on top of it, and then it was all hidden. I suppose if you poked an eye at the window you could see it, but it was kind of, I knew it was there. I don't think, no, I'm gonna, at some point before I finish, I'll see if I can get a torch and light it up, but it's very difficult to see at the moment. But there is a ghost. There is a ghost in this back bedroom. It's not quite my full-time job now. I work in marketing for a manufacturing company, but I do this evenings and weekends. Whatever time I can snatch to work on it, I will. One day it's the aim that it will be the full-time. I just need lots and lots of commissions. Advice for getting into marketing? I don't know. I started off being a graphic designer. It's a role I ended up in after I got made redundant a couple of years ago. What were you saying there? Self-adhesive bricks. You probably can do. You could make your own quite easily if you had the patience for cutting out. There's a few good doll's house accessory sites out there. I don't use them obviously because I'm in a completely different scale, but you can get all sorts of things now, so I wouldn't be surprised if you can get self-adhesive bricks. My material, yeah, in case you didn't catch it, I either get them from either Amazon or from a model shop online called Model. They're called 4D Models, but the web address is modelshop.co.uk. That's where I get all my structural elements from. There are lots of other suppliers for all the scenic elements like the flock and the static grass and the foam. I get them from all over. I just placed a new order actually today. I spent quite a bit of money on some scenic materials. Won't let you repin it. Yes, it's actually it's the Dipton Mill Inn in Hexham. So this is that little corner of the area that has it has the beer garden. The bit I'm working on now is the brewery building, which sits just in there. It would for brick. It would if you had. There are a few standard brick patterns for stone. each building's individual, but you could do. But I think I've been thinking about that, but because the Foamex requires quite a lot of pressure to scribe into it, you'd have to make something like a die cut that you would literally punch into it. Hello, Sea of Grace, long time no see. Yes, you have missed quite a bit. I can't remember when you were here last, but we've almost got the whole scenic base in now. I'm working on the brewery building, the brew house. Basically, I've already done the whole stonework, but I'm going back over and scribing the depth of the stone back into it, just to give it a bit more depth. As you can see, that's what it looks like undescribed. It's quite flat. It looks quite good, but it looks like quite flat. But this is what it's looking like after I've scribed the stone detail into it. Just before I did the river, yes, you've probably missed a lot, and yes, I do quite a lot of work behind the scenes. I have to make sure conditions are right to broadcast live, so I've got to wait until everyone's, doing their own thing, etc. So I do snatch a little bit of model making in when I know I'm going to be interrupted. Otherwise I would be live all the time. Yeah. I can scribe around the corner now. I've gone a little bit wrong with that, but we'll have the guttering to hide. So this is what I like with being able to do the mortars. You get the miters, sorry. It's a commission. Yes. You can scribe around the corners. When I first started doing modelling with Foamex, I used to just butter the corners together. Yeah, it is true, but the other side of it is having an audience also, weird as it sounds, it helps with productivity, because I'm kind of drawn to working on things and not giving in quite so easily. But it also does mean I end up staying up quite late when I should. 5 days now. So I'm hoping he's just busy. Hi Gaz, yeah, I'm just going back over the brew house building. I've already made the whole thing and done the stonework, but now I'm just going back over the stone, putting some depth into it to give it a little bit more character. Yeah, I'm going to have to, at some point I'm going to have to sharpen this scribe. At the moment it's doing quite well, but the more you work on models that have been filled with grout or plaster, the more blunt it's going to get. It doesn't usually get blunt from Foamex, but it will do from the grout. Thank you. Yeah, and with things like the scalpels, I do tend to go through an awful lot of blades. That's okay, Mick. Thank you for joining me. No idea what time it is, but I'm just going to do a bit more scribing tonight. And I'm on later than I normally am because I play football on a Monday. Oh, is it that time already? Guess I won't be finishing this wall then. Thank you. Thank you for my time checks. It's because I don't have a clock handy where I am. To do the brickwork, it depends what you're building. The sheets of Foamex costs around about £1 for an A4 sheet. Obviously, I can't remember what the tool cost. The fix and grout that I use for putting the mortar in is about £3. But paints could set you back a bit because they're quite expensive. But you could certainly get going at least on a small project for about £20. Where does this building go? This goes in the back corner here when I've done. Or what, if you mean where the whole model goes, it will be going on display in the pub. But that's going to sit there eventually. Good night, Gibbo. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure for your company. I want to do that while I'm going to carry on the face. So this is an engineer scribe. I got this from Amazon. Excuse me. And it's my favourite one of the ones I've had before. It's just really nice to hold. And it has a nice sharp point. So it means you can get... Oh, thank you. What main materials? I mainly use a material called Foamex, which is a PVC foam. Sometimes your dentist may be nice and give you some old probes that they're going to throw away. No, I believe he sells beer to the local area as well. Someone was on the other night actually that said that they sell the beer that they make here, so I think it goes around the local area. No dentist drills. I wanted my drill this evening actually, which is in the garage, but the lock's frozen shut. So I've had to improvise. I'm putting a little bit of force into this to an extent because I'm sort of scribing into solid grout. But no, it depends how deep you want to. It depends how deep you want to go with the cut. Because this is quite rough stone, I am putting quite a bit of force into it, but I'm just pressing on quite lightly there, and it's coming out. It all depends on the pressure that you need. It depends on how deep you want to go with it. It also, Foamex also has a slight grain to it, so you've got to be careful sometimes that you don't allow it to follow the grain, otherwise you go off pattern. Model making's not really great for your fingertips either. You end up with fingertips wound down or covered in super glue or grout. Yeah, the longest I've ever spent on a model is around about 200 hours, which I spent on a Yorkshire mill. It was all individual stone. So whereas this part of the model is most of it's scenery. The mill occupied the whole space really, and there was a lot of stone involved. But I did the same here. I went over it once and then over it again, so there was a lot of scribing. A lot of scribing. Thanks for the likes, folks. And for any new followers, it's all appreciated. Any new people here, if you just want to pass some any new people here, if you just want to pass some time watching a little bit of gentle model making and some nice friendly chat, this is the place to be. Emmerdale, no, it's not quite. Good night, Gaz. Yes, I'm probably going to give myself another half an hour or so and then I'll be off, although the temptation is to finish right now, but so many of you still tagging along, even though all I'm doing is scratching. But I should be around again tomorrow. Yeah, sorry, no, it's not quite Emmerdale, but it is in the north of England. Oof, nasty. It's been really cold here today. We did have actually some snow for a while. I hope you didn't flood. But it makes a change, the lack of rain pounding on the roof. I was wondering why it was so quiet. That's because there's no rain. Well, you're right on the south coast. Whereabouts on the south coast are you? Pool in Dorset. Oh, right. Yeah, dog's okay. He's just merrily washing his feet at the moment. He's getting better day by day. I don't think he's back 100%, but at least he can walk around now without sort of crashing into steps and things. No, he's not over keen about going out in the rain. You kind of got to force him. But I don't blame him really, because I'm not keen on going out in the rain. Yeah, I think it's about that here. When I was coming back from football, I think it was about -2. I hope it doesn't frost the car. I hate getting in the car in the morning and having to clear the windscreen. Oh, warmed up water in a Ziploc bag. Yeah, we had snow this morning. I wasn't aware of it until the cleaner sort of popped in and said, "Oh, it's snowing." I said, "Is it?" I used to work somewhere where we had no windows, so it could be snowing or it could be heat wave. I wouldn't know. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I've never heard of that, but it's a good idea. TikTok, the fount of all knowledge. going to brush off the table because it's absolutely covered in dust and it's getting in my hands. Not comfortable. Well, it is, yes, it is. Now and again you come across a gem. You've also got to be careful you don't end up watching a lot of the same thing that you never intended to watch, because then all of a sudden it thinks you like that and you can't see anything but. Good night, Adam. Thank you very much, and thank you for pushing the lights up. Hopefully catch you tomorrow evening for another round of let's watch Lee scratch some stones in a piece of Foamex. Just the roundabout. Oof, that's nasty, Christine. See, if that was in a car accident, £4,000, they'd be writing it off, wouldn't they? So it's shocking how much things cost to replace. My suspension is going. I can feel it every time I go over a bump. It's starting to clunk. I'm just dreading taking it to the garage. Thank you, Jenny. You wouldn't be married to somebody called Matt, would you? Yes, you. Jenny Alexander. I know somebody called Matt married to a Jenny Alexander. No. Well, you know, there's probably lots of you around. It's worth asking. It'd be bizarre if you lived in York, though. Scotland. A lovely country. Jade's in Scotland. Thank you, Ben. Yes, there are a few divots in my roadway up there, but I've looked at the real thing, and there aren't really a lot of potholes. So I think I was just making a generic road. I might go to town with it, but I was trying to match the look of the road as much as I could. No, I haven't as yet, no. It would be cool to do that. I've done a sort of a semi-abandoned house before, based on a painting. But I've not done a bomb-damaged scene before. Or yet, should I say. It'd be nice to get a wargaming project, but I think it's on a different kind of budget level, really, because wargamers are not really looking for expensive pieces. They just want something. Oh, good evening or good morning in your time frame. I've just discovered miniature TikTok. Miniature TikTok's a nice place to be. getting on for midnight here, I think. Welcome along. I'm not going to be here much longer now. I was aiming to get this whole wall finished, but as anybody's been watching me will know, it's quite time consuming. It's certainly worth the effort. This is how that wall's coming along now. Obviously I've done that whole side, done this gable end. This is the actual rear of the building, so you're probably not even going to see this, but I'm still doing it. I just want to make it look as nice as it can. Yeah, that'd be quite a model, wouldn't it? Although I think Coventry would be a good sort of model as well, because there's a lot of destroyed medieval architecture that you could really go to town with. Oh, absolutely, yes. Do build a lot in stone. And each area has their own sort of unique kind of stone. You know, you've got your sort of pale Cotswold stone, your darker Yorkshire stone, and then you've got your granites of Scotland. That reminds me, I've got a Scottish villa to make at some point. Don't drop your phone on your head. But I'm happy you've stumbled along. Follow if you wish. I do this kind of thing most evenings if I can get on. Tomorrow it's my daughter's Duke of Edinburgh Gold Award presentation night, so I most likely won't be on at all. Yes, it is. I'll just shift it into sight. It's making my arms ache. This evening I've done the stonework that it sits in. Let me just move that. So yeah, it goes on here. I've just put the paving stones. It's a little bit pale at the moment, but that sits in there. That's the only... You may or may not be looking at the building on Google. This, if you're looking at it on Google, this part of the building is there, but this isn't. This is a brand new building that hasn't been photographed yet. So if you go sort of on street maps to this point of view, this building's here. There's a greenhouse attached to it now that's not there anymore. Yeah, it's not painting. Look, it's I can't move it, but this is physical. Tiny little bridges. The thing in the background, this is actually a photographic backdrop. It's just sat in front of my curtains. But yeah. Oops, it's stuck to the paving. That's my slab that goes in there. I'm just working on the brew house. So yeah, if you do what Sea of Grace has just done, if you look up Dipton Mill in Hexham on Google, you'll be able to see the actual scene that I'm modelling. As you see it on Google Maps, it looks like it's either late winter or very early spring or something, because there's not a lot of greenery. Thank you, Graham. Cheers, Jade. I'm just getting carried away with doing this stone. It's very, very therapeutic and it's very satisfying to do. Yeah, thank you, Dren. You thought it was, you've been watching this whole time, thought it was a painting. Well, I'm kind of chuffed. You think the artwork's good enough to look like a painting, but no. What's in front of you is a 3D handmade model. I suppose it's the backdrop that kind of makes it a bit confusing. Good night, Jenny. Thank you for joining. Yes, Jade's my mod. She knows about the whole process that I use, so she answers all my questions if I'm not watching, and also makes sure that any kind of trollish behaviour gets quickly silenced. We're a nice little happy community here who just enjoy watching and talking about model making and anything else really, as long as it's fun. I use for the gravel I use powdered grout mixed with real soil. It just has a nice little small scale texture to it. So grout comes in handy for a lot of model making aspects. The model gravel that you can get from model shops supposedly in 00 gauge is far too big. It just looks like if you worked it out, they'd be actually mini rocks rather than gravel. No, I don't make cars, but I do have a few die-cast cars in the right scale that I sometimes put on. Got this little bus here, but no, I don't make the cars as well. So Father Fragrance, I'm making an inn, but this building I'm working on at the moment is the brew house that belongs with it. So it sits at the back of the model over here. Just move the camera very sharp. So that sits at the back there. I think I might end up cutting the back of the frame off because it looks a bit... I'm toying with different ideas of that. What I thought I was going to do is actually clad it with something like a plywood to conceal it, but I'm also toying with the idea of painting it black and then dry brushing it to look like rock. Don't know yet, but the initial idea is to clad it in plywood all the way around, just to finish it off. But like I say, I'm toying with the idea of painting it black and making it look a little bit like rock. Where's the cow gone? Oh, yeah. Cow hasn't escaped. She's back. Look. Evening, Heather. You made me worried then. I wondered where she'd gone. I think somebody said that looks fantastic apart from the cow, so I took the cow off. Oh, that looks so real apart from the cow. I mean, why wouldn't you have a cow wandering around the beer garden of a pub? She's had a few bites. Yes, it's very Emmerdale-y, isn't it? It's actually Northumberland it's set in, but it's not too far off the Yorkshire Dales, I suppose. I imagine there'll be a fair few farmers that visit the inn as their local. I'm well, Heather. I can't speak for anybody else, but yes, thank you very much. Steady on now. I'm not building a dairy for the cow. I think the farmer might come and pick her up. It'd be very easy to get carried away and build the extra houses that go around you're talking about the occupation of model making, 14 years. If you're talking about the model itself, I've been on it for about 70 hours now. It's called scale modelling, or if you're referring to the scene that I'm building, it's Dipton Mill in Hexham. They are, aren't they? They're all. There's a nice little house behind it. To be honest, I haven't explored too far around the area on Google, but there's some. You could quite easily get carried away and go further up the scene. I suppose if I was doing it as a project to recreate the village area, you could do that. It'd occupy quite some space. It's not far off, Claire. I've just got this model's going to take a little bit longer yet because I need to add details like the guttering and little details like that to it that'll just help make it stand up. And then I have a few little scenic items to do still. I want to make the lamp for the corner of the building because that's quite a prominent feature. I've also got some benches to make. Yeah, I've ripped the face of a model off on a live once. The first project I ever did was a signal box, Sea of Grace. That was for myself when I was starting to sort of teach myself how to scratch build. I did once make a nice little house out of clay, but I think I got fed up of it and ended up breaking it apart. Wish I hadn't done that now, but and I'm sorry if I've missed a few questions there. I'm trying to do. Yes, well, I don't think I do, but I'm kind of hoping in a way that the landlord kind of publicises the model and gets a bit of a local interest in it. But I keep meaning to enter one of my only demo model in the craft fair at the local summer show. But I always never get round to it. I never get round to it, have I? I've been correct. How many models have I done? I don't know. Over the years, probably around 50. Of these house portrait models that I make now, in the last 2 years, I've probably made sorry, I'm just trying to count in my head. Around about 20 sort of largish house models and around half a dozen sort of shed summer house models. Yes, I have used polymer clay for a few bits. I'm a bit wary of using the oven at the moment with, energy prices being what they are, but I do actually plan to make the lamp out of polymer clay. That's the idea that I've had. I was originally going to do something stupid like using tiny pieces of acrylic to mimic the glass, but now I've had the idea that I'm going to make it out of polymer clay and just get the idea of it rather than being an actual scale replica. No, I make whatever people want me to make. The last one I made was a suburban semi-detached house. I've actually got that on a shelf behind me. Because it hasn't gone to the client yet. I'll just bring that into view if you want to see it. Ouch. So this is a much smaller model, or a much more modest model. So obviously it has a nice garden to it. So this is just a semi-detached house, so I've cut the end of it off, but it's on a more modest base. Still the same level of detail, all the guttering and pipe work, etc. But I must admit my favourite type of modelling is stone and rural areas. I think the most urban one I've done is a townhouse in Plymouth. It was a painted, rendered wall, that one, so... Oh, did you see that when I was doing it? Yes, I think the plain wood frame looked a bit bland. It was one of my viewers suggested I painted it grey, so it's a good idea, that. This is the brewery building. It has got a nice long driveway, yeah. So this is the brew house that belongs to the pub. So yeah, it's a commission of the inn, so they've got, it's the whole property, so it's the inn, the beer garden, the stream that runs through it, and the brew house just behind. I'd already, I've basically done the stonework once before, and now I'm just going back over it again with a scribe to deepen the details and make it a little bit more, give it a little bit more relief and interest. Just shift the light there. I think the stonework looks a lot better when you've got scribe detail into it. It's just because this stonework's quite pale, so it was looking a little bit flat. I think now I've carved the detail into it, it just lifts it off. I'm starting to get really cold now, so it might be time to call it a night soon and go heat up a wheat bag and cuddle up in bed. Strangely, I'm not quite tired at the moment, but I will be in the morning. That's a good idea as well, yeah. I use grout at the moment, but sort of watered cement would be a good plan. I like things to have a rough texture. No, not all my, not unless a client specifically asks me to, with the lighting. I have done a couple in the past, but it's an added extra if somebody wants lighting in. It's not too difficult to do, but if you're putting lighting in, you have to consider how you're going to build it slightly differently, because you don't want any wiring visible through the windows, etc. And you also have to pay attention to whether, if a room's going to be lit up, you're probably going to be able to see it, so that will need some level of detailing that's going to be visible when the lights are on. Apparently it's a Harrington Grenadier. No idea what one of those are. It's a bit lost because it's going to John O'Groats. But it's a South Down vehicle, so I think it's based in Brighton. It's just a little bit out of the way and lost. I inherited a load of models from my stepmother's ex-husband, strangely enough, who modelled the Southern Railway quite exclusively, so I've got a lot of Southern-based vehicles and things, completely out of place, but it's right scale. Just pretend he's on a strange magical mystery tour. I suppose if he's on his way to John O'Groats from Brighton, then could theoretically call through Hexham. midnight. Yes, thank you for the gifts. You can tell I want to finish this wall, can't you? That's another thing about going live, is I'm kind of motivated to completing something. If you guys weren't watching and talking, I'd have given up around an hour ago. So certainly, from my point of view, broadcasting live or doing a live is quite motivating. It's also nice to have the company as well. It has gone fast, hasn't it? No, I do have an Etsy shop, yes. The cow's very small, very far away. It is a Father Ted quote. Lost a lot of comments there, but yeah, I have an Etsy shop with a few little items in it. I diversify a little in things that I make. I plan on putting a lot more things in it, but it is a long drive. Yeah, they could well have pulled in for a few beers. It's quite a well-known local pub. So, yeah, maybe they've got a room booked for the night. It might not be completely full. They've also just travelled from the 50s as well, so it's been a long way. My best seller on Etsy is a memorial bench that I make in 12th scale. So I make a little sort of model bench that can be personalised with somebody's name. It's kind of it's either for people or for pets that have been lost. Not, you know what I mean. It's like a remembrance bench. A few people have bought those to give to thoughtful gifts to people who've lost a loved one. It's just an idea I had, that I made something for a friend whose nan passed away a couple of years ago. She was very upset about it, so a few of us clubbed together to make her like a nice little package to send to her, and I decided I was going to make something for her. And then I thought it'd be a good idea it might be an idea to try and see if there was any interest on Etsy to sell my services, as it were. I also make, like Jade said, scarecrow models. I don't think I've got anything around at the moment, but I also make silly little things out of polymer clay. That's like a little scary or cute scary worm that I made. I think I've put all the scarecrow heads in a drawer somewhere. Don't have anything handy. Jade's the proud owner of 3 of my scarecrow models. Don't have any of those on Etsy at the moment because they're all gone. But there's a couple of build-it-yourself paper card kits that I've made for building your own little shed model. And there's a custom shed order facility there if you wanted a handmade shed making. Obviously anything sort of larger scale has to come through contact me directly here or through my website. Yes, the cow's back. Went for a wander, but now she's back. No, I haven't done a football stadium yet. I did once get asked if I would be interested in recreating the old Huddersfield Town ground before they moved, but that inquiry faltered. Someone did ask me if I'd be interested in making a replica of the Wickham Wanderers ground, but when I told him the price and the waiting list, he was, oh, maybe one day. Sorry. Always interested in propositions if they're serious ones. My DMs on here are open, as they say. We don't have to be following each other to message. There's lots of ways you can get in touch. Yeah, no worries. I got an email the other night from somebody who'd been watching me on TikTok and wanted to be put on the waiting list. I said, yeah, no problem. I need a bit more information off you. Haven't heard anything since. But hopefully he's just busy. I've only got a few more stones to do and then I've gone all the way around it. She does. I am very lucky. She spends a lot of her own free time helping me out. If she wasn't helping, there's so many questions that you guys ask that I would miss. Because it's not easy to keep an eye on the screen at the same time as keeping an eye on the model making. I certainly wouldn't get as much done either with having to stop every 2 seconds just to check my screen. I can kind of see things moving along in the corner of my eye, and that's when I stop. And that's when, sorry, I don't get the Railway Modeller mag. No, I used to get Model Rail quite a lot. They're rather expensive these days, and sorry for shifting what I'm actually doing off screen. That's another problem with trying to look at the screen at the same time as you end up losing focus of what's on screen. But at least you've got the main model to look at. Right, this is nearly done now, and then it's nearly time to go. So then all that remains to be done on this model, on this particular part of the model anyway, is weather the roof a little, and then I'll add all the little details like guttering and drain pipes, etc. I do need to sleep. All right, very good. Been working on this model now for about 70 hours now. I think, yeah, I kind of realised what you meant there. Don't know anybody called Theo. Or at least I wasn't aware I should have been working on his model. Should be able to just message me through TikTok. It should be open to anybody to message, or you can look at my bio page, which has got a link to my website, which just had my email on it, or you can click through to my Instagram and message me through there. But like I said, I've had a few people just recently message me through TikTok, even though I'm not following back. But so that facility should be there. Sorry, I've moved off screen again, haven't I? All you can see is the edge of my hand and noises of scribing. Oops. And then just round the corner to do now. It's the backdrop is Huddersfield, where I live. It's looking over the Home Valley towards Home Firth and ultimately Derbyshire. It's just a scene that it's a panoramic photograph I took when I was out walking the dog a couple of years ago. And I was lucky enough to be able to get it printed as one large There's one large print. So it's about, I think it's about 3 meters long in it in total. I've just got a little bit of it rolled out. Right, I have now finished scribing. Are you from Derbyshire? Not that far away, just kind of over the hill a bit. So that's kind of pointing. I think that way is Home Firth, over that way, so kind of over there is more Derbyshire. Yeah, I'm not far off Halifax, it's kind of the next town over. It's about, what, 8-10 miles away. Right, so that's my stonework scribed this evening. Is that where you are, in Halifax? Oh, cool. Wakefield. Hello to Wakefield. I used to live in Wakefield. I used to live in Eastmoor, or near Eastmoor, if you know where that is. Just by the centre of town. So I'm really quite happy with that now. Doesn't need any more work on the stone. I think I was going to try and touch up a few of the stones, but I think it looks a lot better. Well, I'll have to touch it where I've got a bit of black paint on it. Yes, I lived in Wakefield for about 14 years or so, I think. I used to live near Renthorpe-ish, Alverthorpe, between Alverthorpe and Renthorpe for a while, and then we moved over towards the centre of town. So yeah, that's the and there's a scale cup of tea there and a railway tunnel portal over there. But this is the scope of the model now. So I've been working on that brew house building all night, and slowly panning round. This is the whole site. There's the Dipton Mill in there. You're watching from Glasgow. Hello, Scotland. There's been a few Scots tonight. One of my further commissions is actually just outside Glasgow. It's a nice little Victorian villa. Some lovely stonework. I've been asked to do that. So that's just the view now of the corner. Sort of looking up the hill. So in scale, you've got the road going up the hill there. Those little trees on the corner will be eventually painted. They're just some little wire ones that I cut off something else tonight. So I think the tree addition on the back lifts it an awful lot as well. Now this is a set of steps that goes down just on the edge of the model there. So looking back over, that's the brew house that I've just been working on. Bit more to do. And obviously the very lost bus with a very dusty roof, just driving down the side. So with that, I'm going to call it a night now. I think I've done what I wanted to do tonight. That was to at least get the rest of the scenery in place. So now I just need to add some extra details. There will be some telegraph wires that will come across there at some point and to the building. That'll be fun to do. Good night, Andrew. Thanks for silently watching. I'm absolutely freezing to death now, so thank you for your company, and hopefully I'll catch you in the next couple of days. Maybe not tomorrow, but definitely Wednesday. Yeah, certainly. I've put a request on to follow you. That might be the problem. See how we go. Good night, everyone. If I can figure out, yeah, there we go.